Have you? And welcome to the Service Improvement and Finance Panel. Um, First item, Rachel, start recording. Okay, first item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
No apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Second item is the disclosure of personal and prejudicial interests. Has any member got any? No? Any officers? No. Okay. Item 3 is the standard item, prohibition of whip votes and declarations of party whips. Fourth item is the minutes of the previous meeting, and the previous minutes for the 18th of April have been circulated. Any issues? Anyone online? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Item 5 is the public questions. We haven't received any. So we move on to item 6, which is the progress update on local government use of data action. Can I welcome Councillor Andrea Lewis, Cabinet Member and Deputy Leader. Would you like to say a few words on the introduction? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I've also got Sarah Lackenby with me this morning, joining online. So just to say a few brief words of introduction to this report. This is an update on the progress against the action plan, which resulted from the All Wales study by the Wales Audit Office into how councils were making use of data. So the original report was published in December 2018. And then the panel received subsequent reports in June 2019 and March 2020, just before the pandemic. The pandemic, I feel I should point out, has had a profound impact on this work. However, I'm pleased to say that significant progress has been made and all 11 specific recommendations are now considered closed. So that's good news. And then finally, in conclusion, the new digital strategy 23-28 was approved by Cabinet in April, which has a specific goal relating to data. And this area of work will develop as part of the digital transformation programme over the coming years. So with that, I'll pass on to Sarah Lackenby, and I'm sure Sarah can answer any technical questions, Chair.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Chair.
Andrea. Thank you very much. Sarah?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lewis. Yes, just to pick up the detail on some areas in the report that you'll see. So we have got a series of continuous projects that are still been going on for some time as part of continuous daily work anyway around the local land and property gazetteer and the information asset register. And in addition, we have launched the Swansea account. You'll know that was developed quite significantly during the pandemic, and work will continue on that in coming years so that we can add more services to it. Mandatory training on data protection and cybersecurity is available online, and the Council also uses the Wales Accord on the sharing of personal information, the WASPI framework and protocols around sharing data with partners. And again, this was accelerated and used very importantly during the pandemic. In terms of the role profiles and staff across the council that have skills and capacity around data. So workforce planning, which happens annually, plus also the fact that it is stipulated in role profiles and discussed during appraisals, identify which staff have those skills and capacity around analysing and managing data. But this is probably going to be enhanced further, I think, as we move forward with Oracle Fusion, because there's new tools available in there. But obviously, it's a key part of the workforce planning process every year. And we already have established systems in place to work with services to review and approve improved data reporting standards. That is an ongoing piece as part of daily work. And then in terms of this report, in terms of next steps, it's now goes on to the Governance and Audit Committee. So obviously, any thoughts and comments and questions we can answer today, and then also take forward into the Governance and Audit Committee as well. Thank you, Chair, and happy to take any further questions. Richard Rowlands and Steve King are also on the call. They'll be able to help as well, answering any further detailed questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Peter Black?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It occurred to me reading this report that I'm not the most data literate person, by the way. There's a lot of stuff here going on in the council, which is all around what the staff are doing with this data and how we're using it to manage the council. But as a councillor, I have very little, not just input, but actually understanding or overview of that work. And when I was looking at the section on skills and capacity, I noticed we've got, and you referred to the mandatory training, Sarah, that we have a role that we support the development of staff data, analytical mining and segregation. Well, I don't think councillors need that, but I do think it'd be useful to have some training courses and some information courses so that councillors themselves can understand what data is available and how it's used. And that I think that would help in terms of scrutiny as well, because it's more than just the quarterly report that Richard Rowlands brings to us, but also everything else that's going on in the council and how we can understand that.
Sarah?
Yes, no problem. I can take that away as an action. No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other members? Linda, Councillor Linda.
Sorry, my little yellow hand doesn't seem to want to work this morning.
Okay.
Just following on from what Peter just said about training, it would also be very useful to know which officers have got access to what data, because I can't be the only councillor who spends a lot of time searching for the right officer to answer a question. You know, you've got a fair idea. Somebody within the council knows, but finding them is often quite time consuming. Just one other point, can I just clarify, this report is hasn't been redone by the Welsh Audit Office, but it's actually a council self-assessment?
It was an all Wales exercise undertaken by the Welsh Audit Office, so it wasn't
No.
it wasn't specific to, it wasn't like an audit of Swansea Council alone. It was an all Wales assessment, and then obviously there was recommendations for councils and recommendation for us as Swansea. They didn't come in and do an assessment in the council as they would with other audits. I think it was a desktop exercise that they did.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so Andrea.
Thank you, Chair. And if I can perhaps respond, trying to be helpful regarding who holds what data. If you've got specific questions, that might be easier to handle because obviously we're a vast organisation and different departments hold different data on residents for different reasons. So perhaps if you've got any specific queries, Linda, if you could please forward them to us and then we can investigate those. I think it might be easier doing it that way round rather than telling you who holds exactly what, because we could be here for a very long time.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yes, Sarah, you actually mentioned, Oracle Fusion and so on. I must admit, don't know a great deal about it, but you actually mentioned about sharing information with partners. What about residents at the end of the day? Is there any, benefit to residents with regards to extracting any information and the restrictions actually put on that information?
Yes, so under data protection, obviously we have to protect people's data and the sensitivity of data. So there is a limit to what can be shared. There are, in terms of the WASPI framework that I spoke about, it's a specific protocol, but that would be shared only for specific reasons as stipulated in an agreement for a specific purpose, and that's usually only done with agreement anyway, an agreement with residents. So that is slightly different in terms of wider sharing of data. So anonymized data that we might be able to share when we talk in the report about open data, there's certain bits of information which would be not sensitive, would have nothing to do with an individual, that we could can be used as open data and then can be used to develop things like apps in the community and things like that. But that doesn't relate to anything to do with individuals or people. That would be data about, say, how much footfall there might have been in an area, or it's quite anonymized data, nothing to do that could in any way identify an individual, but might help in terms of developing things which would then help both the council and its operations, but also the public. So understanding things like what car parking spaces might be available if people were driving into the city centre, for example, doesn't relate to individuals, but can be helpful to the public. So there's those kind of things where data can then be used in a different way. But anything that's sensitive is protected under data protection and is not shared.
Okay, thanks for that. I think I read in the papers as well something about some sort of data control manager. Is there a new post actually being created because of this? Or
Sorry, Councillor Jones, can you pinpoint which part of the report you're looking at there? Because
I can't actually. I must admit, I just read through it and I just seemed to come across, you know what I mean, that there was some sort of data control manager actually in the system anywhere, or
no, we don't
No.
have. I mean, we have the obviously we have our data protection officer, but that if you wanted to message me separately, I can have a look at which part of the report you were referring to, and we could have a conversation about that.
thanks.
Okay, are there any other members? No? Anyone here? No? Okay, can I thank you all for Councillor Andrew Lewis and Sarah for being online and giving us an update on the report. Thank you very much. The next item is item 7, is the Welsh Language Standards Annual Report. And we've got Councillor Elliot King online, and I welcome also Councillor Robert Smith, who is here in person. And I don't know which one of you wants to start off.
I'm happy to kick it off. And
Okay,
just
if you don't mind.
thank you, Chair, and thank Lisa for presenting this report. It's, as it says, it's an annual update of progress in terms of how Swansea Council is responding to the Welsh language standards. Those standards are, if you follow the link, there's over 160 standards which we as a local authority are required to adhere to, and it sets out the kind of working practices which are expected of us. There are a few highlights I'd pinpoint there. One is, of course, the implementation of the coach. It's not a coach as you would give your grandmother. It's more of a kind of cubby hole or a virtual cubby hole where you could develop, as I said, in section 3.1. And of course, the introduction of the Welsh language. Welsh language is now fully integrated in the integrated impact assessment, and I think that again is an important step forward. But if I could hand over to Lisa, she'll be able to take us through the report, Chair, and then perhaps we can have some questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Robert. Lisa?
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. So the Council has continued to make improvements on implementing the Welsh language standards during the year despite the pandemic, and obviously dealing now post-pandemic with the priority being on service delivery standards, as unfortunately that continues to be the greatest in number where we receive most of our complaints. We had during this report period, we had 6 complaints all relating to our service delivery standards. So service delivery standards have been maintained, and there have been significant increase in Welsh language calls due to TTP, which has since wound up. And obviously that we manage the Pan Wales Welsh Vaccine Certification Service, the telephone service. So put simply, the hard copies of the vaccine certificates for COVID-19 for travel, to enable travel and whatnot. So work continues to develop on the new system for the public to complain to the council, including around compliance with the Welsh language standards. The Welsh language standards have strengthened the provision of bilingual services in health and social care across the council as a whole. As part of more than just words, which is obviously an active offer the council has extended to offer to social care staff to learn Welsh through work. And so this is related not only to social services, but also to the housing department. There have been over 2 million total page views on StaffNet in 2021 to 2022, and over 19,000 of these were actually related to Welsh and the Welsh language. The Microsoft Teams virtual coach Ysgrifennu and Cymraeg was available throughout the year for officers to use virtually. And also following on from that, Microsoft Teams now does offer simultaneous translation. Furthermore, 6 Welsh language complaints, obviously I mentioned previously, were received directly to the council during this report period, April 2021 to March 2022. I don't know if there's any questions in regards to this.
Okay. Have you finished?
I have, yes.
Right. Councillor Peter Black.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions to do with the Welsh Translation Service, if I may. I noticed that in 21-22, roughly about 20% of the words being translated were done by external providers, and I'm just wondering, is that standard on an annual? Is it always about 20%? And if so, would that not be cheaper to actually have in-house staff doing that rather than actually putting it out for external translators to do that work?
That's a very good question, Councillor. Unfortunately, we have had an increase in our workload. I'm acting operations manager as well for the Welsh Translation Unit, and we have been particularly busy last year and this year. We don't know whether perhaps that's due to the pandemic, post-pandemic, we're not quite sure, but it has been increasingly busy. Getting back to your query as to whether it's worth us recruiting for a new member of staff, we shall look at that. And if you would like to contact, I welcome you to contact me separately on that, and we can certainly discuss that further.
Well, is it possible to have a breakdown of that data for the last 3 or 4 years so we can see what percentage of translation is being done, and also the cost of using external translators as opposed to using in-house translators? That'd be quite useful just to give us an idea then of whether we're actually getting value for money in terms of the use of external translators.
Yes, of course. And may I ask, please, that you submit that query to me after in writing?
I think the clerk will write you a letter. There'll be a letter following this.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Obviously, you don't directly manage the Welsh Translation Service, I take it.
I do. I'm the operations manager as well.
Okay, I'm just wondering then, what's the reactions to the introduction of automatic translation, then using Microsoft? Were translators happy with that? Is that? I mean, obviously it's improved productivity, but what's the general reaction to that? So just as a matter, my wife is a translator. She hates automatic translation.
Right. Okay. Well, I've spoken to actually an external translator in regards to Microsoft Teams. And what they've said is how there's still a lot of admin behind the scenes, so to speak, in getting everything facilitated on Teams. So on one side of things, it does make life a lot easier, not having to obviously travel to the venue and carry the heavy equipment and what have you, and obviously the risk and the security risk involved, and that's very expensive.
I'm not talking about simultaneous interpretation. I'm talking about the automatic translation process, whereby you translate through Microsoft,
right?
And then
Google Translate.
It's Microsoft, I think we use, don't we?
Well, there have been issues, obviously, what we call an obvious Google Translate. Is that what?
No. Well, I understood that we adopted a process which the Welsh Assembly piloted, whereby all the translations run through an automatic translation from using Microsoft Translate.
We do not. No, we do not use that at all. We have got our own software.
Yeah.
Actually,
Okay.
it's a number of different software together. However, we do not use that.
We don't, do we? Okay. 'Cause
No.
I understood we had adopted that. Okay, I'll raise that
We-
with.
You're welcome to raise that with me, obviously the clerk afterwards. But no, we have something what we call the robot, if you will, but the software that we use is not Microsoft.
Okay, I know you have management software to manage the process. Okay. The only other question I had was related to the standards. I was looking at the list of complaints, and obviously the big problem, of course, particularly with signs, is people go ahead and do it without checking with the translation department. Have we had any major breaches of standards at all in the council in the last couple of years?
We had, obviously this is prior to my time, I am aware of the Scrutiny signage that was misspelt, but
No.
obviously apart from what's been reported in this particular report, in terms of signage complaints, we haven't had any further in relation to signage. Obviously, I'm aware of what's happened very recently.
Yeah.
But,
We haven't had any more out of office messages on car parks, no.
Out of office messages continues to be an issue throughout the council, but in terms of actually branding as well. So it's not just standards in terms of branding too, that for example, I know myself when I've received an out of office, not only has it breached the standards, but it's been multiple different colours or multiple different fonts. So there needs to be still, we've worked with our communications teams in regards to highlighting this. It's an issue that's ongoing, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Can I come in
Robert,
there,
okay.
Chair? Because, yes, there is an issue with signage. And of course, when it happens, it's there, it's in the public, and it becomes a matter of ridicule. But let's remember as well how often they get the signage right.
Exactly.
And of course, that's never mentioned. And I mean, we're talking now 99% of the times and more, the signage is translated correctly. But then again, of course, when it doesn't happen, and it shouldn't happen at all, I know that, but that's the one that gets the attention. I think we need to bear that in mind.
That's what sells
Councillor.
papers, isn't it, Robert? And one mistake sells papers, that's all they're interested in it. Not about the 999 that are perfect, it's just that one. Okay, I got Rebecca, Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, diolch. I should normally be in my Welsh class on a Tuesday morning, so this is a good conversation for me to be having instead. It was just, to kind of come back to this, to the complaints. I mean, 6 complaints to me seems like an already very low number. Not least when you then look at the detail of those complaints, and 2 are about the fact that our car parking machines show the Welsh first, and you have to change the language on them, and that is within the Welsh language standards, so that's not within our control. And 1 was about a street sign that's not on an adopted road, so also not within our control. So that brings us down to 3. That seems like a very low number, and I just wanted to know, does that compare favourably with other councils? How are we doing comparably across Wales? Do we know?
Well, I would say in comparison, for example, to Neath Talbot, we're faring well. We are comparable to Neath Talbot, and what I would say as well in regards to signage, and I do apologise for jumping back to the previous question, in terms of signage for this particular report period and for the next particular report period, we haven't had any further complaints in regards to signage. Obviously, I am aware of what's happened very recently, but just to reiterate that this report only pertains to what's happened within this particular report period. But what I would say is, you are right, is when you actually look at things further, is actually 3 complaints during this particular report period. And that does compare to Neath Talbot, is comparable.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca, is that it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, Councillor King, do you wish to say anything?
No, thank you, Chair. I think everything's been covered.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, a couple of things. It's good to see the percentage of employees in the council with Welsh skills gone up from 6.8 to 10.2. Where exactly is that increase in? You know, it's actually given figures there with regards to understand Welsh, speak Welsh, and so on. Is the 10.2 actually against willing to use Welsh in the course of work? So
At the
it's-
moment, we're not able. So, for example, I know in other organisations, you're able to discern if someone is a learner, if someone's a fluent Welsh speaker at this point. And I may be incorrect in saying this, and I will get back to you. I will check on this for certainty and clarity. But we're not able to discern if that person is a confident Welsh speaker, if they are fluent, or if they are actually a learner. But I will double check on that and get back to you, councillor.
Okay, thanks. And the other thing, I know Robert Smith is actually on the line and so on. You know, Welsh is, shall we say, mandatory in schools. Are we seeing a benefit across, coming through that more children are actually, I know it's part of the council as such, that more children are actually getting Welsh skills? Are we seeing an increase at all of the work that's been done in schools?
I will have to get back to you on that, but what did surprise me recently, I don't know if any of you got a chance to see the census.com information in regards to how many Welsh speakers are in each. So, for example, Neath Talbot and Swansea, and our number of Welsh speakers have actually decreased, which is quite concerning actually. So overall number of, that may be due to the pandemic, I'm not quite sure. But in terms of how many school children with their standard of Welsh, if they are able to speak Welsh, I will get clarification for you on that point as well.
Okay, thanks very much.
Councillor Robert.
Yeah, I think the answer there to Councillor Jeff Jones is we are making slow progress, but I think it is progress. But we need to go a lot further. In the report, you've got the figures being educated through the medium of Welsh. Don't forget as well, there is Welsh is taught as a subject and is an integral part of all schools in Wales, not just the Welsh medium schools. And I think that's something that needs to be recognised. If I can say on a positive note, as far as the Welsh language is concerned, 11% I think is what 11.5 or whatever it was of Swansea's population spoke Welsh according to the census. But you've got to look at the actual number within that, and I think that equates to around about, I'm not a mathematician, something like 25,000, and that's an important critical mass that we need to build and develop, and you could create something with that. When you compare the critical mass of Welsh speakers in Swansea with areas further west, that's something that we need to bear in mind, and I've been mentioning this for a long time now, that we need to bear that in mind as well as the percentage figure.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? If not, can I thank Councillor Robert Smith, Councillor Elliot King and Lisa. I'm going to try pronouncing your name. De Benedictus. Thank you very much for attending, and do appreciate it. And obviously next year we'll have a better report, I would have thought. Thank you. I'm going to go through the work plan, and if anybody has any comments about what was good and what was bad, then if you can actually speak up. Our first meeting in September, we had a learning program of understanding the financial reporting and performance monitoring. How did people feel about the instructions they had in those two particular meetings? Okay, or not too good, or what?
Chris, I was just going to say, I haven't put my hand up and so on. I don't think you're going to ever have enough, you know, I don't know if there are any accountants actually here. I can remember before, especially before the budget, that each political group actually had a quite an in-depth understanding really of the budget and so on. As I said, you know, it's beneficial to actually had what we had, but I think, you know, I think we need a lot more actually.
Okay, understanding budget. Anyone else? No? Okay, then we had the capital budget monitoring report in October and the annual performance monitoring report. Well, the first one is the revenue and capital budget monitoring, where we have 4 of those in a year. So really, it's a question of, you know, just having them and having the officer here to explain them and answer questions. The performance monitoring report, because of the pandemic and the way in which it's reported, it can change every year. And it's something, again, it needs to understand. If there's any issues anybody has, please let us know. The Welsh Public Library Standards Annual Performance Report was a bit of an eye-opener, in as much as it told us which of our libraries was successful and what issues were surrounding some of the libraries. And I think from that, I think we did gain the fact that some of our libraries may be coming towards the end of their you know, life, and we need to look at persuading council to look at investment into them. Then we had the Welsh Housing Quality Standards Annual Update. Again, that was an update on that. I don't know if anybody found it in depth enough. I personally think that in future, we may have to have this in 2 lots, because it's such a huge piece of work, because we have the bit of work which has the actual construction and the work that's carrying on with the housing quality standard, but also we have the investigation in how we do it. So I think that's something that we may have to look at in future. Then we had the midterm in December, the midterm budget statement, Q1 performance monitoring report, and the very important report on recycling and landfill and a performance report. Again, this one, because of the pandemic, there was issues surrounding the actual figures. And I think we've got to wait now for the next annual report, where we can actually measure one against the other. The Audit Welsh report, making equality impact assessments. I think that was quite a difficult report, and one which I think we can all agree was a bit of information which was a bit dry and not necessarily very helpful to a lot of people. Then we had the pre-budget proposal, which was in January. Obviously, that it changes every year. Q2 revenue and capital, Q2 performance monitoring report. They will always be there, and they vary every year, obviously. And then we had the Sustainable Swansea update. This one, because of the way in which council has changed, and we now gone to transformational delivery service, I think it was come close to the end now of Sustainable Swansea, and we're going forward into the new shape of the council. Then we had the pre-decision scrutiny on the budget. In March, we had the planning annual performance report, which I found quite frustrating. I don't know about other people. I think that we need to look again at what we are examining in that report, because some of the stuff that was in there, I thought was just a tick box exercise, and we didn't get the actual report, or we didn't get the officers to understand that the annual report was not just about planning applications. It was about how the planning department operated and how efficient it was, and the public perception of it. Right, then in April, we had the annual review of wellbeing objections and the corporate plan. Well, all of us have actually done a lot of work on that, because we've already done it. It went through council as well. performance monitoring report, and then today we had update on local government and the use of data and the Welsh language standards annual report. If there's anyone has any particular views, I'm going to ask Rachel to put together a letter to send out about the work plan. Obviously, in the new year, in the new civic year, we will have a meeting with the Scrutiny Programme Committee where, apart from our usual finance and service, there were other issues that we'd be looking at. And one of them, obviously, is that when we met with officers with regards to issues around regeneration, there were issues that we need to look at how that is going to, where that's going to sit in the near future. But if there's any comments or questions, has anybody got any? No?
I think something was brought up today with Sarah, about Oracle Fusion. It's such an important change or transformation with regards to information that's available, and perhaps a good understanding, really. I know it impacts actually a lot on finance and other parts, but I think it'd be beneficial to bring something in with regards to that.
The Scrutiny Programme Committee has actually scrutinised the costs of Oracle Fusion. We did that. I mean, Oracle Fusion effectively is a tool which we're using to access mostly pay slips and HR issues, as I understand it.
Yep.
But I think certainly the idea of having training on data and what data we've got would be very useful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michael Lock, Councillor Michael Lock.
Yeah, the other point is I noticed that the permits are now going from Oracle onto My Permit. And I think that's happening in the next few weeks.
It's happened.
Well, it's happened, yes, because when I go onto My Permit on my phone, I actually find it there. So I think that would be useful if we could have some little bit of training on that. And not necessarily physical, just information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, then we will send out the letter. Rachel will send it out over the next couple of days, and please have a look at it. And if there's any issues or comments you want to put forward, then please do. The last item on the agenda are the letters, the scrutiny letters that have been sent out. Are there any questions or comments on the letters? No? If not, can I thank you all for attending today, and look forward to seeing you in another month's time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.